Good morning, everyone. I am Pastor Lori Kochanski. I live in Albany. I'm coming to you from my backyard. I am the assistant to the bishop for faith formation in the Upstate New York Synod. And I'm sitting on the ground this morning. Just felt this deep need to connect to the ground, to be present on the earth, to literally sit as close to the ground as I could get. So I did put a blanket down, but right underneath I can feel the grass. I'm hopeful there are no anthills where I've chosen to place my blanket here in the backyard. And I have spent a few minutes, just a few, sitting, noticing this space and what's going on. It's Friday morning. I haven't said that already. I like to just name it because for me sometimes in the morning, I've shared with you before, I need to just name where I am and what's going on. This week, as I do my practices of breathing and meditation, what I've noticed is an overwhelming need to sit in the grief of what my own physical body is feeling and taking in and taking on as we collectively, as a community, as a country, reflect on our place in the midst of things. And the practice I've been practicing this week is the practice of doing the next right thing. It looks different every moment, but when I start to get overwhelmed, I seem to be going to that mantra of what's the next right thing? So for us this morning, the next right thing in these few moments is to pay attention, to notice where you're sitting, what you're feeling, what's in your body, what's going on, and to just be with it. I think that's the thing that's gotten to me this week. There seems to be something I need to be doing, but for me, it's about being and listening and paying attention to what can be the next right thing, not necessarily the big picture, but the little picture that I live in and what my role and responsibility is. And so for a lot of that time, I've been listening to one of my favorite groups who has taught me a lot through their music, Sweet Honey in the Rock. And they reminded me of a poem that has carried me through a lot of things, but in particular, I wanted to share it with you today as we begin this time together as a centering. Maybe just because it seems like the next right thing to do is to share the words of Dr. Maya Angelou. The poem is called When Great Trees Die. Trees fall. I guess I am thinking a lot about death. When great trees fall. So I hope you'll listen and notice, and then I'm going to reflect a little bit about what I notice in the poem. Ironically, though, before I read this, I'm sitting in the middle of my yard, and recently some great trees fell right behind me. So for me, I have that image of trees that I knew housed birds that was then slowly and methodically taken down. It wasn't quite a fall, but it was loud, and I was grieving. So When Great Trees Fall, by Dr. Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills thunder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber away after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. And when great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened, our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms. Slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration, our senses restored, never to be the same. Whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. Again, that's Dr. Maya Angelou, When Great Trees Fall. And like all poetry, there are so many meanings. But what I notice for me as I practice this sense of what's the next right thing is that I know we're not in that peace blooming place yet. Because we haven't sat long enough, acted hard enough, showed kindness enough, understood neighbor justice deep enough, lived into the promises of our baptism. A baptism free for all, filled with grace upon grace. So for me, the next right thing is to just be. Because the thing about trees that fall, sometimes we know they need to fall. All kinds of trees. That tree that I told you about in my yard, it was dead inside. It needed to go, and yet it didn't. It didn't take away all the feelings that came with watching it come down. And then last night, as I was laying in my hammock, I heard the neighbors that own that yard and that tree gathered around a fire together, laughing, talking. I have to admit it felt good in the midst of the other noises of this city that is fighting for the rights of all people every day. As the fire rose from that tree and I heard the voices, I gave thanks. So I hope, friends, you'll join me. I hope you're able to follow me in this winding road. Perhaps sitting on the ground makes me a little less focused. But I hope you'll come back to the center of that practice, the one that I've been doing this week that I commend to you. That practice of doing the next right thing. Listening, sitting, discerning what that is. There's a person I follow on social media, a woman who is a fiber artist, and she lives in New Jersey, an African-American woman who has commended to all of us who follow her to sit in the gap, to sit in the gap and to stay in the gap. So perhaps to stay at the roots of that old tree, the old trees that have needed to fall, and the ones that we grieve that have fallen, and to notice that next right thing. And now may God bless you in the work of your hands and your feet. May you find moments of rest and moments of realization. May you notice in the brokenness that there is life and peace. And may you be able to discern what the next right thing is. For you, for us, for me, for the world. Peace be with you, dear friends. May this day be what it needs to be.